Dying to be Stuckmocky, Chapter 3. Vira calls sanctuary. Vira stared with frustration at the two committed combatants and wondered why she didn't just walk away. Walk where, though? Back through the mysterious portal that dropped her in? "Hey, stop glaring at each other for 1 minute and answer me this. Where are we?" Vira demanded testily. The Stuckmocky turned away from Mirren to look down his nose at her. He couldn't help it. His nose was more than 1/2 metre higher off the ground than hers. "That question is potentially quite problematic," he rumbled. "Are you referring to our physical location in relation to other specified objects? Or are you perhaps," and the Stuckmocky leaned in closer, "inquiring on a more abstract level about our progress towards a brokered peace?" Vira's irritation allowed her to match the Stuckmocky's intense gaze. "The first one, I think." The Stuckmocky straightened once more to his full, imposing height. "Well, in that case, we are standing outside the gladiators' entrance to the Simsingian Stadium in the town of Watchit, which is the administrative centre of the hereditary kingdom of Glorfindal." His eyes narrowed. "But you already knew that." Vira realised with a start that she did indeed already know that. But how did he know she knew? The information was all completely familiar to her from playing Mirren Fearless Fighter nearly every day. So familiar it may be, but it still didn't make any sense to her. "But how did I get here?" At that moment, a resonant thumping sound that had been building for some time intruded on their conversation. Mirren looked over his shoulder with alarm. "I know that rhythm well. The stamp of shame. The crowd is demanding justice be enacted on a cowardly combatant," he hurried to add. "Not that the sound is ever heard in relation to my own performance, you understand. Before today, it seems." He turned flashing eyes on Vira. "Why have you brought such vile shame upon me? Let me dispatch this creature," he said, gesturing dismissively at the Stuckmocky, "and regain my honour." "Oh, bother, bother, bother," moaned Vira. "No time for unravelling mysteries right now. I need to get us all somewhere safe." She reluctantly looked down at her console and began to press buttons. Immediately Mirren began walking rapidly away from them, quickly breaking into a run. "Young man, this is not what I had in mind," he called over his shoulder as he ran down the rutted dirt road. When Mirren was nearly out of sight in the confusion of nearby buildings, he suddenly stopped, and the Stuckmocky lurched after him. "What?" the beast exclaimed, as Vira ran alongside him, pressing buttons. When they caught up to Mirren, he was gesturing towards something behind them. Vira turned to see a crowd of people near the stadium. As she watched, someone near the front pointed in their direction and shouted to the others. Several people immediately began running towards them, with their lead quickly followed by still more of the crowd. "My public! They still love me!" Mirren cried as his face lit up. "Sure, love you to death," said Vira dryly. "But as much as I'd like to see them try, let's not stick around." She sized up the Stuckmocky for a moment before turning again to her console. Immediately the beast bent down, scooped Mirren into his arms, and unceremoniously lifted him off the ground. "I wasn't at all sure that would work," said Vira with a tone of self-congratulation. "But great, this will make things much easier." "Easier for whom?" asked the Stuckmocky, as he resumed his lumbering gait, now cradling the speechlessly spluttering Mirren. "Are you sure that shouldn't be who?" asked Vira as she jogged alongside. "Yes," puffed the beast. "I believe whom is the pronoun used as the object of a verb or preposition." "And for is a preposition, right?" "Correct." At that moment, Mirren regained the power of speech. "The spirit preserve us! Is there no end to the ignominies you will subject me to, young man?" "Call me young man one more time," retorted Vira, "and you'll discover a whole new world of ignominies, soon as I find out what they are." Mirren was rapidly losing his heroic glow in her eyes, especially as he was still clutching the stubby holder to his chest. "How about acting as lookout and telling us how close your admirers are now?" Mirren stretched his neck back to look around the Stuckmocky's furry biceps. "They appear to be gaining on us," he reported. "Help, my beloved public!" he shouted gustily. "I am being abducted by this gang of cutthroat ruffians." "What do you think you're doing?" objected Vira. "He is trying to scrape together some dignity by acting the victim. Please let me deliver him to his beloved public. Please," begged the Stuckmocky. "I'm severely tempted," muttered Vira, trying to examine her console closely in her jolting hands. "I seem to remember up ahead here." The trio jogged around a corner, across an open square, and up the wide marble steps of an imposing stone building, closely followed by an irate and vocal crowd of sorely disappointed Wachit citizens. As Vira made straight for the building's open doorway, a man robed in red stepped into view from inside and held his palm up facing them. "Halt! First answer these sacred questions." Vira pushed on straight towards him, following in the wake of the overpowering Stuckmocky, and called out as she went, "Lupasos, father to all, strength of body, strength of character, and yes, oh, and sanctuary." The priest was forced to stagger back somewhat indignantly to let them pass, but immediately stepped forward into the doorway again to block the testy citizens from following. "Sanctuary has been called. You may not enter." The crowd didn't take the news well, but there was nothing they could do other than violate a sacred priest of Lupasos, and we all know how well that turns out. The trio, meanwhile, bustled through the temple's vestibule into a comfortably furnished antechamber, where the Stuckmocky discovered he could drop Mirren from a great height onto a fairly firm reclining seat, although not firm enough for the Stuckmocky's liking. Mirren lay slightly winded where he had been dropped, while the beast sat himself down on the other side of the room and panted heavily. "I recognise the answers you gave to the first two questions," said Mirren in a thin voice. "But what were you saying yes to?" Vera sat herself where she could keep an eye on the other two. "Oh, only men are allowed in Lupasos' temple, of course, so I was just confirming that all who entered were of the male gender." "Well," mused the Stuckmocky, "that is not accurate, you know." "Of course I know," said Vera. "How many times do I have to tell you I'm female?" "You're what?" exclaimed Mirren, finding his full voice again. "No, I mean I am not a male," continued the Stuckmocky in his resonant voice. "I am genderless, or perhaps both genders, or neither. Depends how you look at it." "You're what?" exclaimed Mirren again, before falling back on his seat in confusion. "Well now, how very interesting," said Vera. "That wasn't included in the game's character descriptions."